Hey, this is Kiona, and you are listening to Birth as We Know It. Every other Wednesday, you'll hear new episodes with birth stories and experiences told directly from the people who experience them. But today, you are listening to a Baki bonus. These episodes will be a mixture of resources, information, and tools that can be helpful as you journey through pregnancy, labor, birth, and postpartum. If you'd like to be a part of the discussion about these episodes, we'd love for you to join us in the Birth As We Know It podcast community on Facebook. Just go to birthasweknowitpodcast.com/community and we will happily welcome you into the Baki fam. All right, let's dive into this episode and learn something new. Some of you may be curious as to why you are seeing an episode this week when truly this is a bonus episode. I am excited to be starting to do some bonus episodes because there's so much information to share related to birth, and I love birth stories, but in addition to birth stories, there are birth resources and information that should be put out there too. So I have Kelly with me today, and Kelly is the founder and creator of an app called Share the Drop. So Kelly, welcome, and tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you for having me. I've spent the last 17, 18 years working as a pre and postnatal yoga instructor. I've been a birth doula for about 10 years. I do not have children of my own. It literally never crossed my mind to do that. But I love pregnant women. I love attending birth, but more than like prenatal yoga and doing that birth support, I really just have found a lot of community involved in these like childbearing years. So I live in Virginia. I owned a pre and postnatal yoga studio for a decade, but we had a lot of community classes. And so we had grief and loss support groups, some groups for infertility, but by far the best offering I ever had was a weekly, every Friday, completely free to anyone in the community lactation support group. And that group was packed every week. It was just the whole lobby was full of strollers, and there were moms sitting down. 2 lactation consultants ran it, and the moms just talked about everything under the sun. But really, this idea about feeding your baby, I have found, in my opinion, is so difficult. We spend so much time making a birth plan and very, very little time making a feeding plan. So, kind of behind the scenes, I was always, if you might, like a local milk broker. Moms would come to me and say, I have so much milk, I don't know how to get rid of it. Other parents would say, I need milk, how do I do this? And I was constantly sending them to Facebook. There's a huge population of families sharing milk on Facebook. But the problem was, it's a very clunky system. And so every single time I would recommend these groups, people would come back and say, I don't have time to do this. I have a newborn or maybe some toddlers at home, a job, a life, a relationship. And I'm going onto these Facebook groups, trying to track down the one that's closest to me, waiting for someone to admit me into the group. And then once you're in, it was like these forum-based messages, right? It's all these posts, and they were constantly going back and checking. Did someone leave me a message? Did someone respond? And it was just like they were ships like passing each other in the night. And so because the families I was working with, they were like, we need something easier, I just became the easy option. And so I knew my clients really well. And I would say, Kiona has milk and Sarah needs it. And so I was always just connecting women. And then in 2017, I was diagnosed with breast cancer. And at that point, so many women in my community reached out and they're like, hey, this has been on my mind ever since I got treatment or I had been diagnosed. How am I going to feed my baby? And so I just kept saying, I'll get you milk. Don't worry, I'll do it. And then it was just this overwhelming thing. I had a refrigerator at the yoga studio. There was always some sort of breast milk in there. Sometimes there was placentas if I left a hospital and came straight from a birth. But I saw, first of all, women who had excess just saying, look, my baby is thriving. My baby's gaining weight. I have this liquid gold. I don't know what to do with it. There's no way I'm pouring it down. Please just help me figure out someone to give this to. And then other parents who I would help get milk would come back and say, that was so helpful. I felt like I was able to give my child the very best nutrition. And not only that, but I met 2 donors who are now good friends of mine because we're all in this community together. And so that was going on for a long time. And literally one night I had had a very long day at the studio. I came home maybe at 9 at night. I poured myself a glass of wine. I opened up my laptop and there was two emails. One was from a client who was moving across the country, and she said, as much as I'd like to take on my frozen breast milk, my husband is not on board with that. Who can I give it to? And quite literally, the email underneath it was from a woman who was pregnant with her fourth, had just been diagnosed with breast cancer. And she was like, as soon as I give birth, I have to get treatment. How can I get milk? And so I knew that they lived just a few miles apart. And so as I was emailing them to connect them, I got a notification on my phone from Bumble. So there was this guy 10 miles away. And that was the light bulb moment of, oh my gosh, all these Facebook groups that are doing wonderful work, if we just put it into an app and like in real time where you get local milk because you're creating an app based on your zip code, not only can you like get messages, notifications as soon as someone matches with you, as soon as someone sends you a message, we could not only get milk to babies that day, but also build in more support for families. And so being just a lover of babies and women, I was like, this is a great idea. But more so, it's like that community building. I know you have kids, those early days of parenthood are, you're not sleeping, you're out of the normal roles in your life. You might not be going to work, but you're isolated with this baby. And if you were someone who wasn't able to produce enough milk, or maybe you couldn't produce any milk at all, think about breast cancer survivors, people who adopt or use a surrogate, extended family members taking care of babies, same-sex couples. There's a whole variety of families who just can't produce milk. And if that's what you want, then why not use technology to just make the system easier? And so that's literally how Share the Drop came about. I'm very, very proud of it. It's up, it's running, it's working well. Now I just need everyone to know that it's an option.
Yeah, no, I love the evolution of this app because it's not just, I see a need and I'm going to do something. It's like, no, you are literally working through how to share milk, how to get milk, all of this. And then you just happen to get a notification on Bumble. And the idea of having this kind of app so easily accessible to people and to have someone say, ding, I have milk 5 miles down the road if you need it. I downloaded this app, and as soon as I logged in, I will say I said I was someone that needed milk. I love that there's filters, and I'm going to ask you a little bit more about those. There's filters that you can go through, and as soon as I hit publish, this is what I'm looking for, there was someone 2 miles away, and then 10 miles away, and 7 miles away. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And these are like real people, real families, not like bots. It's literally people saying, hey, I'm down the road if you need something. I love it so much. Let's go ahead and talk a little bit about these filters, because I know that a lot of people that are looking for breast milk have concerns about how trustworthy they can be of people as they're producing milk. So go ahead and tell us what filters are on there, and then we'll dive into how to ensure that those filters are actually accurate.
So we talk about, are you taking any medications? I'm not asking you to put that on an app, but when you match with someone, ask them like, what medications are you taking? What is your dietary factors? Do you consume dairy or gluten or whatever it is? Because there are some babies who of course have some allergies. Do you consume caffeine? Do you consume alcohol? There's also kind of like an other, so you can say, I've had the COVID vaccine or I haven't. That's important to people. I'm actually having my team add a kosher filter because I realized I was talking to some moms in New York and they're like, that's very important to us. So it's kind of the basic what you ingest and what you put into your body, which might come through milk. Now, the other things we do upon onboarding for donors, we ask them if a recipient is interested in seeing any recent lab work, is that something you would be willing to show them? Again, we're not uploading that because of HIPAA, but any woman who's lactating has some recent lab work. And so if they agree to do that, we put a little medical icon on their profile so recipients know that's one more thing they can ask. I have some sharing guidelines. And so we encourage them, like, ask them, what are your pumping practices? How are you sterilizing your bottles? How are you storing it? And then one of the things about having it local is you can say, because it's kind of like a vetting process, right? If like all my friends have babies, and so they're now talking about like, wait, what preschool are you going to and why? And how'd you make these decisions? But I want you to say, Kiana, who did you go to for prenatal yoga? Did you have a doula? Who's your pediatrician? And then you can kind of like vet and you're like, oh, you went to that yoga class? And then you know your friend and you're like, hey, I'm about to get milk from this donor. Do you remember her from yoga? Or you might figure out that you're friends with their neighbors. And so it's very much informed consent and education has to be done. If you are receiving someone's breast milk, it's up to you to understand if they tell you they're on a medication to go and do your due diligence and make sure that's a safe option for you. But I want it to be ask as many questions as possible. So thinking about like a dating app, I could very well go on a dating app today, match with someone, and go sleep with them, right? That's up to me to make those decisions. But when I'm not on dating apps anymore, I don't think I'll do that again. But when I did, I wasn't just, I was asking them a lot of questions, you know, like, what's your lifestyle like? Are you a big drinker? That wasn't very appealing to me. Like, what is your lifestyle? I like to be really active. If someone's like, oh, I just like stay around and watch movies, whatever it is, it's asking all those questions that are crucial for you and then making the right decisions. Like, we give guidelines on don't go to someone's house that you've never met. Maybe meet them in a brightly lit park, right? Tell someone where you're going. It's all about kind of how to keep yourself safe. I will say that sometimes because we are a newer app and we're growing, we don't have a ton of users everywhere. So as you filter down, you might not get as many people in your feed. So I always say like start with your ideal. You know, I want someone who there's no caffeine, no alcohol, gluten-free, dairy-free, all these things. Well, that might kind of dwindle your feed down. But I want you to understand that you're talking to a human being, right? What I get asked a lot about is safety and how do I know this is safe? Well, the number one safety feature we have is we do not allow donors to be paid for milk. And I get a little pushback from this because people are like, but I'm working so hard and I'm pumping. I get that. I totally understand how hard it is to pump and store milk. But the fact of the matter is, as soon as we open that up to be profitable, people can give you anything.
Mm-hmm.
They can lie in their profile and say, "Oh, I don't drink at all," but they do, and they could give you maybe breast milk, they could give you non-fat milk, they could give you watered down anything, and then we have issues, right? But if someone just altruistically has more than their baby can consume, one of the things I might ask a donor is like, can I see a picture of your baby? If you see this baby with just these gorgeous little rolls and stuff, right? Like, and someone's giving it to you out of the kindness of their heart, that for me takes a lot of the safety measures out of it. And I do go on Facebook a lot and look in these groups and people are selling milk. There are ways for you to do that. It's just not on my platform. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes total sense. And I do understand both sides of that of like, oh my gosh, I'm working so hard, like I'm pumping all the time, and this is a lot of effort on my part. But then also, when there is that monetized aspect of it, it really does kind of take away it has the ability, I should say, to take away the moral and ethical aspects of it because people then want to make money versus wanting to give out of the kindness of their heart or because they have this extra abundance of milk. So I get it. I totally, totally get it. When you created this app, what was your overall vision for it? Did you hope to have it be global, nationally? Like, what was your intention behind that?
I definitely wanted it to be national. I mean, there's 3.3 million babies born every year, right? Not everyone can feed those babies. I want it to be an easier route for people to get milk. So think about what happens in times of war or in times of crises. So when we first launched the app, it was shortly after the war in Ukraine started. And immediately there was this messaging coming out from women there saying, we don't have clean water. Well, the same thing just happened after Hurricane Helene. And these women in especially Western North Carolina, they were like, we don't have the ability to use the formula you're sending. Some people were sending ready-made formula, which is great, but it costs a lot more. There's a lot more transporting because of the weight of all that. And so that was difficult. But if they didn't have water and they didn't have electricity to like sterilize their parts, we were sending them formula that was not working. And you know what women there were doing in both situations? They were sharing milk because also in Western North Carolina, they had roads out where trucks couldn't even come in to bring in formula, right? So it's times like that as well where you're like, wait a second, how are babies being fed? Well, the old fashioned way, like we've always done it. You know, like we had wet nursing, but now this community sharing is more about like of course, people need a water. We got them water, right? Why could we not kind of use the tools that were already available to help them feed their babies? I have a lot of donors on the app who have reached out and said, it was really, really important to me the second time I was feeding that I had an excess, that I donated it because my baby was in the NICU and received donor milk there. Or I have a friend now who did have some excess milk, her first baby, and she was able to donate to a friend that she met through the yoga studio, but then had breast cancer and now has a baby via surrogate, and she is now getting milk back. And so it is this reciprocal thing. A lot of it for me is not only do I think you should be able to get milk, if I did decide that I wanted a baby, it would be very, very important to me that they had breast milk. I simply can't produce it. But we used to raise our babies all together, and our grannies and sisters and aunties all helped in, especially those early postpartum days, but we just don't do that anymore. And so I'm just a big believer in community, and the more we work together, the better we all are. And so that is kind of my altruistic side of it. I just want families who want access to milk to get it, and I want them to start showing up together. When I had my yoga studio, there was a woman who came. She just moved to town. She didn't know anyone. She had a newborn, and she came to a yoga class of mine and then never stopped coming. And then I would see her coming and like talking to the other women on the mats, and then I would see them leave and, go have coffee together. Well, fast forward 8 years, I was at a party at her house, and there were 7 families there. All 7 of those moms met at my yoga studio and have all become friends and raised their babies together, right? And so that is my ultimate goal, because if we just took care of each other more in the most simple ways, and sometimes it is like, hey, a mom is struggling and does not want to send her partner to the store for formula, but she's worried about her baby. And then there's a lady 3 houses down who can help you instantly. So that's my big dream.
I love it. I love it. It sounds like the dream is just to bring back that community that, especially here in Western cultures, has been pushed away because of the ideal hope of independence. And that is very troublesome to like how we grow families. And society today, especially in the Western culture, is not built for parents. It is built for hard work, always working for someone else and doing all the things. So yes, Kelly, I love that so much. I love, 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 love this app. So tell me how my listeners can find your app and what devices this app is on.
So this is a web-based app. So you can go directly to sharethedrop.com, create an account right there. You can download it on your phone, opt in for SMS notifications. And so it works just like any other app, but you just go to the website. In the beginning of thinking about all this, I was like, if I have an app, I have to be on the Apple store, right? Like that's where everyone goes. And in fact, if I'm talking to someone at a party and they pull out their phone and they're like, start to look on Apple, and I'm not there, it's a web app. But you don't have to have a smartphone to use it. You don't have to have a computer. I do have a subscription fee for people looking for milk. I waive that if they're WIC or SNAP eligible. And I do get emails from people saying, I'm at the WIC office and I'm using this app here. I just think that let's remove all barriers to entrance. You can follow me on all socials. It's just at Share the Drop, but sharethedrop.com. It has all the information about the app, how it works. There are some screening guidelines for you. All the information is there. And anyone at any time can email me. It's Kelly, Kelly, at sharethedrop.com. I'm happy to talk about this with anyone, answer any questions. I have pretty thick skin, so send feedback. I just need to spread the word far and wide.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're here for, because I truly do love the idea of this app and love the fact that families can really get what they need in addition to growing a community and knowing that there are others around them that are going through very similar things. So thank you, Kelly. Thank you so much for sharing this. And if those listening now want to get more information, of course, you can go to sharethedrop.com. But in addition to that, you can go to birthasweknowitpodcast.com/share the drop. Awesome. Thanks, Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for listening to the Birth As We Know It podcast. To get notified about all new bonus episodes and all new episodes of people sharing their birth stories or experiences, make sure you follow or subscribe to the Birth As We Know It podcast on your favorite podcast streaming app or anywhere else you listen to podcasts. If you found the information in this episode interesting or helpful, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with someone so they can learn something too. All right, friends, it was great learning with you. Let's do it again soon.